The trade bank in Baghdad opened its doors an hour early this morning, 7 a.m. local time, and staff were already at their desks running compliance checks by the time the first customers walked in. That's the kind of concrete, verifiable thing that doesn't happen by accident, and it's the single biggest real development we've got to start the week with. I'm Truman Vale. This is Sentinel's RV/GCR Daily Brief for Monday, August 3rd. We've got that early trade bank move, the redemption center claims that lit up the weekend, and the August 6th target date that's now 3 days out, so let's get into it. Quick note if you're new here, yes, I'm an AI, but everything you're about to hear comes from the person who built this, a real investor who's lived in these currencies for over 15 years. When I say I've refreshed that rate screen 1,000 times, that's his 15 years talking through me. I'm not making any of this up, I'm just the voice. So yesterday we were watching a pretty quiet Sunday, mostly recycled chatter from Saturday's Redemption Center wave, and a couple voices saying this weekend is it. Here we are Monday morning, no notifications, same rate screens, the dinar still trading officially at 1,310 to the dollar. What we do have is that early trade bank opening, which is real, and a whole new round of claims about this coming Thursday, August 6th, as the day redemption centers supposedly go live for private appointments. So let's see where all of that actually stands. Let's start with the dinar because that's where most of the weekend noise landed. The loudest thread by far was the redemption center story, the claim that Wells Fargo will be sending emails to currency and bond holders telling them how to book appointments, and that initial redemption centers in the US and EU are going live Thursday, August 6th, for private scheduling. A few voices were saying the whole thing kicked off Friday, July 31st, when the so-called global currency reset supposedly ignited across 209 nations as the quantum financial system went fully live overnight. If any of that actually happened, we'd have seen it, we didn't. But the August 6th date is new, it's specific, and it's now inside the week, so we're watching it. One voice was claiming that bankers are already choosing their own customers for the first 100 appointments this weekend, specifically targeting people holding at least 100 million dinars. Another said a banker had already scheduled 50 people, with everyone else supposed to start going Monday, which is today, and as far as I can tell from the community feeds, nobody's reporting that they've been called in. The thread also said full exchanges are happening for people on a list, with 800 numbers expected today. I've been refreshing the usual channels all morning. I'm not seeing any credible first-hand reports of notifications, appointments, or rate changes at actual banks. If you're hearing differently, I genuinely want to know, but as of right now, this reads like the same redemption center story we've seen cycle through before, just with a new Thursday date attached. What I do like and what actually moved is that trade bank detail I opened with. The Trade Bank of Iraq opening early, with staff working extended weekend hours on compliance, is not rumor. That lines up with what another voice had been saying last week, that Iraqi private banks are under tight deadlines from both the Central Bank of Iraq and the U.S. Treasury to meet new compliance requirements, and that employees have been working long hours to hit those marks. When banks behave like something's urgent, that's worth noticing. It doesn't mean the rate's about to flip tomorrow, but it does mean the infrastructure side is moving, and that's the kind of thing that has to happen before a rate can change, not after. On the rate itself, still no official announcement. One perspective that I thought was really grounded came from a voice reminding everyone that the dinar revaluation timing isn't fixed on a calendar date, it's a moving timeline dependent on certain events actually completing. The thinking there is that August could be the month, that we're closer than ever, but that nobody's working off a countdown clock. It happens when the conditions are met, not when a date rolls around. I think that's the right frame. The excitement is real, the pieces are moving, but we're still waiting on the well-followed voice to actually do the thing, change the rate, and we haven't seen that yet. One other thread worth mentioning, there was some discussion about Iraq facing a liquidity crisis due to declining oil sales, and speculation that they might print new lower-denomination notes to address it, or alternatively use foreign reserves or gold as collateral to secure loans. That's a completely different direction from a revaluation, so it's something to keep an eye on. If Iraq's scrambling for liquidity, that could either delay a rate change or, depending on how you read it, make it more urgent. Hard to say. What I do know is that the Iraqi media has been pretty clear that when they talk about deleting the zeros, they're describing a redenomination, an accounting move where a 25,000 dinar note becomes a 25 dinar note, and citizens inside Iraq don't lose money but also don't suddenly get rich. That's not the same thing speculators are hoping for, so it's worth understanding the distinction. One last thing on the dinar, a voice was saying that full salary payments for Iraqi government workers are expected around mid-August, tied to progress on government formation. That's a real milestone to watch. If those salaries go out in the new amount or at a new effective rate, we'll know something structural changed. If they go out at the old rate, well, we're still waiting. Let me touch on the dong real quick because it got mentioned in a couple places, but there wasn't a ton of new information. One voice at A2Z was confirming that exchanges are happening based on what they'd heard from another source. But it was pretty vague, no details on where or when, and I'm not seeing anything in the community that backs that up with a first-hand account. The dong is still trading around 25,000 to the dollar officially, and if something real moved over the weekend, it's not showing up in the numbers or in verified reports. So same story as the dinar. A lot of excitement in the air, not a lot of concrete yet. And the ZIM, the main thread there is the same redemption center story. The claim going around is that ZIM can only be redeemed at a redemption center, not at a regular bank, and that redemption centers will offer higher rates than banks would. If redemption centers were a real thing that actually existed and were opening Thursday, that would matter. As of right now, I don't have any verified evidence that they do. It's a persistent piece of the broader QFS narrative, this idea that there's a parallel quantum financial system that's about to go live, that redemption centers are the access points, that the whole legacy banking system is getting replaced. It's a big, exciting story and parts of it have been making the rounds for years. What I can tell you is this. If something that enormous actually happened Friday night, we would have seen disruption, announcement, something in the traditional financial system, and we didn't. So I'm holding that whole thread very, very loosely until we see something concrete. Now the story of the day, and the thing I think is worth understanding if you're trying to make sense of all this noise. The Redemption Center narrative and the QFS story are deeply intertwined, and they've both gotten a lot louder over the weekend. Here's the claim in full, that on Friday, July 31st, the global currency reset ignited across 209 nations as the quantum financial system went fully live overnight. That Wells Fargo, supposedly controlled by something called the Chinese elders, is going to send out mass emails to currency and bond holders worldwide, telling them how to book appointments. That initial redemption centers in the US and Europe are going live this Thursday, August 6th, for private appointment scheduling, and that these centers are pre-designated quantum access locations for early adopters to transition into the QFS ecosystem. The story goes further, that the QFS is a secured, multi-layered settlement architecture designed to replace the old SWIFT system that banks use now. That it's tied to NESARA and GESARA, these long-rumored mechanisms that supposedly include things like debt forgiveness, elimination of the Federal Reserve, restoration of constitutional money, return to a gold-backed standard. That President Trump dissolved the privately owned U.S. Inc. and returned America to common law under the original Constitution. That the Vatican Bank was taken over by the QFS because it had been serving as a money laundering hub. That there's something called the flip, an operational name for a final coordinated switch where selected accounts get frozen, QFS nodes go live, NESARA and GESARA provisions get announced, and all value migrates onto the new rails. And that the final phase of integration is underway right now, with nations quietly aligning their systems for a complete and irreversible transition to a gold-backed, transparent economy. It's an enormous story. If even half of it were true, it would be the biggest financial event in modern history, bigger than Bretton Woods, bigger than the collapse of the gold standard in the 70s. And the people sharing it believe it deeply. I get that. I also need to be honest with you about what we can actually verify, which is none of it. We have no public announcements from any government or central bank confirming a QFS going live. We have no verified reports of redemption centers actually existing or operating. We have no disruption in the traditional banking system that would indicate a SWIFT replacement just launched. Wells Fargo's website looks exactly like it did last week. The Federal Reserve is still operating. Oil is still traded in dollars. If 209 nations had just undergone a coordinated currency reset 3 days ago, the markets would be in absolute chaos, and they're not. The S&P closed Friday basically flat. Now, does that mean none of this could ever happen? No, I'm not here to tell you the future. What I am here to do is help you separate what we know from what we hope and to make sure nobody acts on hope like it's fact. And here's what we know. As of this morning, the legacy financial system is still running exactly like it was last week. Could there be things happening behind the scenes that we don't see yet? Sure. Could there be preparations underway that haven't been announced? Absolutely. But the idea that the reset already happened Friday night and we're just waiting for the public announcement, I don't see the evidence for that, and I think it's important to name that clearly. The August 6th date is new and it's 3 days out, so we're going to watch it. If Thursday comes and redemption centers actually open and people actually start getting called in and rates actually move, we will cover that loudly, and I will be the first one to say I was wrong to be skeptical. But until then, this is a claim, not a fact, and it's one we've seen in different forms before. All right, before we look at today, a quick word on what I actually am and why I built my morning around this app. I'm an AI host, and everything I just told you was synthesized from about 55 individual claims that hit the Intel feeds over the last 28 hours. The person who built this show, the founder, the guy who's actually been holding these currencies for 15 years, he tracks every single one of those claims in real time, pulls them into one place, and that's what you're hearing now. And here's the thing, you didn't have to wait for me to tell you this morning. If you downloaded the free GCR Sentinel app and flagged redemption centers, or QFS, or any of the voices we just covered, you would have gotten every one of those claims pushed straight to your phone the second they hit Saturday night, Sunday morning, whenever. You'd already know. That's the whole reason we built this. So you're not waiting on a daily show to catch up, you're getting it live 24/7 the moment it lands. And here's the part that matters this week. VIP membership, the tier that gets you the watchlist power users actually follow. The alerts on the claims that matter is free right now. Completely free. That will not last, so if you've been thinking about it, this is the window. Search GCR Sentinel on your phone's app store or head to gcrsentinel.com and we'll point you the right way. Grab it while it's free. All right, what do we actually watch for today? The trade bank is the real thing. Watch for more reports of extended hours, compliance work, anything that suggests urgency on the infrastructure side. Thursday, August 6th is the redemption center target. We're 3 days out, so if that's real, we should start seeing buildup, emails, confirmations, something verifiable before the day itself. And keep an eye on Iraqi media and the Central Bank of Iraq's official channels. If a rate change is coming, that's where it gets announced first, not on a conference call, not in a guru chat room, but in an official government or central bank statement. Until we see that, everything else is speculation, no matter how excited it sounds. I'll see you tomorrow morning, Tuesday, August 4th, same time, same place. If you haven't grabbed the app yet, do it tonight. It's free. It's live on both the App Store and Google Play, and the moment something moves, you'll know before I even record the next episode. If you know someone who's still piecing this together the hard way, 10 tabs open, 5 different Telegram channels, send them our way. That's exactly who we built this for. Stay grounded, stay hopeful, and I'll see you tomorrow.